Come on in, chuck your kit in the corner, grab yourself a seat, get yourself a beer or a coffee, and listen in. Today's guest is a former Scotland international rugby player, a fullback, Ian Smith, now in his 80s and somehow a bit of a TikTok legend with 1.4 million followers. In the first half of this two-part episode, we're talking about rugby as it used to be in his heyday, when juggling the ball before catching it was actually a knock-on, when nobody was lifted in lineouts, and when one of the players playing for Japan had once been a Kamikaze pilot in the Second World War. Yeah, you heard that right. He lived to tell the story. So settle in and enjoy the first half of a remarkable rugby conversation. Welcome to our Rugby Club, the podcast that stands up for the community game. For players who pay their subs, the volunteers who mark the pitches at 8 a.m, and the coaches juggling floodlights and full-time jobs. Because without grassroots rugby, frankly, there's no rugby. Today's guest is a man who grew up wanting one thing: to play fullback for Scotland. And in 1969 at Murrayfield Stadium, he got his chance. On debut against South Africa, the national rugby union team, he scored all of Scotland's points in a famous 6-3 victory. That was international rugby in the amateur era. No sports scientists, no GPS vests, no £1 million contracts, just muddy boots, big tackles, and a dentist from Edinburgh standing as the last line of defence. Because that's the other thing. He wasn't a full-time athlete. He was a practicing dentist. One week, you're filling cavities. The next, you're facing the Springboks. Who'd believe it? He played when the game was tribal, local, and fiercely connected to its clubs. And that's exactly why he's here today. Because he believes elite rugby and community rugby are no longer travelling in the same direction. And he's not shy about saying so. Former Scotland fullback, Calcutta Cup winner, and a man who's seen the game from both the dentist chair and the try line. Welcome, Ian Smith.
And hello. Yes, that's a very interesting introduction, really. I mean, I had a
Did I get it right?
I had a rugby career that started actually, I think, in about 1950, 1951, and a game I grew to love and played for my school 36th 15. Now, can you imagine one school in this day and age running 36 rugby 15s every Saturday? I find that now people look at me and say, no, come on, that can't be the case. But that used to be what happened. And kids got tickets to go and watch international matches and grew to love the game. And I think that doesn't happen. And that's one of the reasons that we now have a problem at the community level. You know, I'm a great believer in the pyramid. There is a pyramid in rugby. And the bigger the pyramid, the bigger the base. And the base is collapsing. And that base is community rugby.
Tell us a little bit more then about your days as a schoolboy. And I mean, 50 odd sides in a that don't make sense.
36.
I'm doing a sevens tournament on this Sunday, and they're struggling to get seven aside sides out, let alone 15 asides, 15 of them.
I mean, it wasn't just my school in Edinburgh, because we played against all the other Edinburgh schools, Watson's, where Gavin Hastings came from, and Royal High School, who was actually the best. And they all ran the same number of teams that we did. And it was almost like a religion. You know, that's what you did. But to be fair, rugby only had cross-country running as competition. Today, it's got all these other sports. And of course, I have to be honest and say, my school now has girls. So we only have half the number of boys. But I was looking at the school rugby record recently, and I think they've only won 3 matches this season so far. And that in itself is not an indictment, but that's a consequence of what's happening. The rugby has now drifted away from the schools and gone into clubs, like my
Mm.
local club, West Norfolk, here in West Norfolk. They have a wonderful mini section, but where do all the players go?
So to be
Suddenly.
clear, when you started rugby, this wasn't in a private school, was it? This is
Well, George Heriot School in Edinburgh, yes, it was, but it
oh,
not like a posh public school like Merchiston Castle or Fetis. No, Heriot's was very much more a grammar school type of school. Watson's the same. Um, and in actual point of fact, when we played against schools like Merchiston, we always felt at a great disadvantage because they had playing fields outside the school, and the kids could go from the boarding house onto the rugby pitch,
yeah.
whereas we had to travel by bus or by tram. I'm that old. For 20 minutes to half an hour to get to Golden Acre to train and then to play. And we did that only on either Tuesdays and Thursdays or Mondays and Wednesdays, and then matches on a Saturday, and no subs.
I guess you didn't want to do a marathon then.
No,
Cost.
I'm not built to run any farther than about 40 yards. Let's be honest about it. I'm sitting down here, so you've no way of telling.
So where does that take you then after the journey at school through the team? I mean, did you? I said to everyone that you had an aspiration of playing for Scotland as fullback. When did that come about, though? I mean, did you have it when you were at school with all those other children running around you? Did you say, "Oh no, I'm going to be Scotland fullback"? I mean, the chances is 1,000,000 to 1, Ian.
I didn't. Well, the truth of the matter is, I didn't grow. My voice didn't break till I was 15, and the games master one day said that basically you're too small to be a centre, which I wanted to be. You're going to be a fullback. So that was that. And then I made a terrible mistake behind my own try line, and the enemy scored, and I didn't want to be a fullback. And that stayed with me for many years. It was still with me when I played for Scotland. But I had to
Was it a
become a
high
fullback.
ball or something or other? Was that what it was?
Sorry?
Was it a high ball missed or something or other?
No, I think I tried to fly hack a bouncing ball and missed
Oh.
it. And it was just awful.
I
But I
see that
wasn't
every
very.
Saturday and every Sunday, so don't worry about it. It still happens today.
I was not very academic and had to repeat a year. And I'd always been in the top sides, and the top sides were sort of D1, C1, B1. And there was B1 in the third form, B1 up to B8. I mean, 8 teams in one year at school. And I said to the games master, I don't want to be a fullback anymore. I want to be a centre. I was repeating the year, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't in the ones, I was in the twos. And I spent the year playing in the B2s. Actually, it was a wonderful year. I had a friend called Ian Purdom, and Ian and I were the centres for the B2. And every week, twice a week, we had a practice against the B1, and that was the only way of getting into the B1 side. And they had two big centres called Colin Kinnear and Chris Binney. You can see how it still lives with me. I'm 15 years old, and Ian and I spent our Tuesdays and Thursdays knocking them over. It was great. I loved it. And when you get into the fourth form, the best side then was the third 15. And the gods went into the first practice. And the games master said, do you want to be fullback? And I said, no. He said, you're in the fourth. At the end of the game, he said, do you want to be a fullback? And I said, no, you're in the fifths. At the end of the fifth game, in which I dropped a goal, I said, I want to be standoff. I'm going to do this. He said, do you want to be fullback? I said, no. But he said, you're going to be in the sixth. So I said, okay, I'll be fullback. So I'm now in the fourths. And then I'm in the thirds. And then 3 boys were expelled with an incident over gramophone records in Ireland. And I went into the first seconds practice.
Oh wow.
And we had a high striding winger called Tony Hogarth, who's my best friend, who was a hurdler, international hurdler, and I could tackle him. And so suddenly, because of the expulsions, I'm in the first. And I have a lot, I have a lot to thank the games master for. But I think he and my father were in league, and he obviously saw something that I didn't. And so I
Yeah.
then had 3 seasons in the school 15,
Yeah.
and it's a rugby mad school, and we have. Do you know between 1957 and 1982, my school supplied 92% of Scotland's fullbacks.
There you go. So you were in the right place at the right time then, weren't you?
Yes. In fact, in total, we've had eight. We've had eight men who played fullback for Scotland. And but then I left school, and they said you would go and play for your former pupils in the day when they were closed clubs. That's not like that anymore. So
What do you mean by closed
you
clubs?
had to go to Heriot's school to play for Heriot's former pupils, who were one of the best teams in Scotland.
Oh, I see.
Doesn't happen now.
No.
And so all the closed clubs, and you talked in the beginning about the attachment that people have to their or used to have to their clubs. Um, then you had no choice. Royal High School former pupils, Edinburgh Academy former pupils, Watsonians for Watson's boys, Stuart's used to be Stuart's former pupils. They had some very famous Scottish internationalists gone. These clubs are all open now and scattered and no following. We have a huge stand at Goldenacre, and it used to be filled for school matches. I mean, they used
Right.
to release kids from school. If we played Edinburgh Academy or Merchiston Castle, the kids from Merchiston were bussed down to Goldenacre, and the boys from Heriot's. They had special trams outside the school or buses to take you down, and the school closed early. So you had, literally two schools full of spectators. I mean, it was that level of enthusiasm. But then I
Yeah.
left school, and they said, "Look, the problem we've got here is the current Scotland fullback is Colin Blakey. He plays for the Firsts. And the younger brother of the Lions legend, Ken Scotland, he plays for the seconds. So you're going to be in the seconds. And we think
This
you're
is at
better.
Harriet's, yeah?
Yes, we think you're better than that. Go and play for the university. They're crap, but you'll get in the firsts. And so I went off to play for Edinburgh University, who then, for 2 years, were the second best team in Scotland. And Edinburgh University 1966 invented the miss moves that are now used everywhere in rugby.
Oh, wow.
And I never saw it done anywhere else. Miss one, miss out the inside centre to the outside centre, and miss two, miss out the outside centre. And I was the fullback, and I had to be outside, but running from way deep, so nobody noticed me coming. I'm a fullback slower than your average prop, and this was a problem. But
Yeah, I heard there was a challenge in terms of the food angle.
how
In
do you mean?
certain commentators made some comments about your chunkiness
Oh,
on the pitch.
yes, deceptively chubby and cherubic. But to be serious about this, the Miss One move and Miss Two moves were invented by a little medical student called Harry Ray, who got 2, 3 caps for Ireland, and involved John Frame, who got 20 odd caps for Scotland. But most importantly, a fly half called Ray Newton from Cockermouth Grammar School. And Ray could pass a wet leather ball 15 to 20 yards off either hand. And there was no television coverage, so there wasn't anybody poring over a screen trying to combat a move that a team used in the first half of a game. We did this, and I got involved in this for 3 or 4, nearly 5 years before anybody knew what was happening. And I
Wow.
got tries for Scotland in my first 2 internationals from these moves because nobody knew what was happening. You can
So
actually,
let's dwell on that for a little bit longer, just because this is fascinating. When we talk about football, not that we do, but when we talk about football, we used to talk about the big heavy leather ball, and they used to headbutt those into goals, which is mad.
yes.
Um, and back in your day, then in your early career, what did they do then? They just passed this heavy leather ball from player to player to player. Did it go literally from scrum half to fly half to 12 to 13 to wing? That's because that's what you do.
And the fullback would be in the line.
Okay.
And that was how it was played. And then Harry Ray said, what we're going to do is we'll put the ball in the scrum and we'll hook it. Now, there's a rarity. When did we last see a ball won against the head? And Ray, we'd call Miss One, and he said, and you have to excuse my language here, but these are the
That's right.
exact words that he said. He said, you have to be standing in your normal position behind the fly half. And when the ball is at the number 8's feet, you have to start running. And his exact words then were, you wee fat shite. And you have to be outside the outside centre when the ball gets there. Nothing else matters.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and so what actually happened was the ball would miss either the inside or the outside centre. And I would appear, and to tell you that there would be a gap of 50 square yards with nobody in it, and I would just run into this hole and either pass the ball to the wing, and we had two very good wingers, we had three very good wingers, or eventually when people thought they'd cottoned onto it and they knew I was going to pass to the wing, they just went past me to go for the wing, and I just kept running and scored. And um, you
Is
know,
that how you got your 6 points against South Africa?
no, I got a try and
Oh,
a penalty. I did miss five, I think, kicks at goal. And but the whole point was that nobody knew what was happening and there was nothing on television. And it was only really after the tries against South Africa and France in my first two internationals. And look, in 1969, there'd only been 13 tries scored by fullbacks in 98 years of international rugby. You know,
so what were you there to do then as a fullback?
I think it was called catch and kick
Okay.
because you knew when you went out to play fullback in an international that the ball would be kicked in the air at you right at the beginning. And if you dropped it, heaven help you because you'd spend the game fielding high balls. Look, an awful lot of what's happened to rugby can be blamed. I mean, I sense that you're like me and you don't like what's happened, can be blamed on Clive Rowlands. Now, Clive Rowlands was, apart from being a very famous manager of the Lions, was the Welsh scrum half. And in 1963 at Murrayfield, Clive Rowlands kicked the ball into touch 111 times.
In one game.
Yes, his standoff got one pass. And that man has had more influence because of that game of rugby on rugby than anybody else that I can ever think of.
Hold on. From my perspective, if somebody did that, I'd say never kick the ball, please. Pass the ball. So what do you mean that
Well, you
he's
see, the Welsh
influenced
lineout
everyone?
was better than the Scottish lineout, and there was no lifting. So he kicked the ball up the touchline. Wales won the ball. He kicked the ball up the touchline, and they just inched their way closer and closer to the Scottish line. They only won 6-3, I think.
Okay. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. This is where it all gets a little bit confusing for the listener. Remember, we're We're on
Okay, that's fine.
Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're all over the shop. And the audience that might be listening to this won't understand how you could possibly score tries and only win 6-3. So, and no lifting in line out. So just walk me through the way that the game used to be structured back in the heyday of Ian Smith.
Well, look, no, I mean, do you know that it's not 100 years ago that if you adjusted the ball in your hands and it was a wet, greasy leather ball, and if you didn't catch it properly first time and you juggled it, that was a knock on.
What?
Yep,
If you didn't catch the ball cleanly straight away, that was called a knock on.
and it was a scrum.
Wow, that's mad.
Yes, when I was a little boy, that was the game,
And
and
the other thing, I think you used to be able to call a mark anywhere on the pitch. Am I right?
yes, and in fact, there used to be 5 ways of scoring:
Okay, explain.
a try, a
How many
conversion.
points?
Sorry,
How many
try
points?
3 points,
3
conversion
points.
2 points. I can't remember the day, but the try was worth 4 points. I think no, drop goal. Sorry, apologies. Try was worth 3, conversion 2. A drop goal used to be worth 4, but then became 3, and a penalty. And these are the 4 ways that still exist today. The 5th way was a goal from a mark.
A goal from a mark.
You could kick a goal from a mark
So you caught the mark
anywhere on the pitch.
and then you placed the ball or drop goal?
No, what actually happened was that the opposition, the enemy, would put 2 big men on the mark, and you would retreat from the mark and then kick to touch. Now, there was no lifting, so there was no disadvantage to kicking to touch. And one very famous incident occurred when, in an international, and I think it was Clive Rowlands who actually kicked the goal. The opposition knocked the ball forward through the line out, and he called for a mark. All right.
Oh,
Took the ball back 10 yards and dropped a goal.
well, how the game has changed.
And so, I mean, my question to you is, do you think that because we haven't talked about community rugby, do you think that your viewers are going to be interested in this?
Well, I think they're fascinated at the moment by all the changes that seem to happen nearly every season in the game of rugby, and also as you know, I'm a referee in the community game, and one of the biggest things that we talk about pre-match is the fact that the elite game that they watch on TV, um, Premiership, internationals, is not actually the game that they play, and I have to remind them that it's not the game. But fascinating for me is that you get skippers walking up to you, asking you why you've made a certain decision, and they say, "Oh, I didn't know that, sir." But that's because there's something like 350 odd clauses and sub clauses of the game. So that's why
Blame,
I think your stories are slightly interesting, because I think it was a little bit more basic then.
well, blame Clive Rowlands.
Hmm.
If I can just go back to the scenario where he kicked the ball into touch and Wales would edge their way up the touchline. I mean,
111 times.
there was a mud line 5 yards in from touch all the way up the pitch because it was a muddy day and the line outs, it just went from one line out to another, to another, to another. Had Clive Rowlands not done that, the miss one and miss two moves would never have been invented by Edinburgh University.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because this was before it was called the dispensation law came in, in 1968-69 time, when you could no longer kick the ball out on the full from outside the 25-yard line, as it was then, not the 22. And our university fly half, Ray Newton, should have played for England. They never even came to look at him. And he could kick a rugby ball, a leather ball, the width of a rugby pitch. And Ray would kick us into touch. The opposition would work their way up the pitch. Student pack couldn't cope with a big border pack, but we only needed to win the ball once, and Ray would send them all the way back. And then we had one international forward called Earl Mitchell, and he could win a fair percentage of the line-out ball. We only needed to win one, and we'd score. Now, none of that would have happened because of lifting in the line-out, which personally I think should be kicked into touch. It should be done away with. And I get people wailing and moaning at me when I suggest these things. But I played against Japan in Hong Kong way back in 1971, 72. And they had a wonderful man called Shigi Kono, who ran Japanese rugby. And Shigi Kono, a lovely man, he had been brought up in London because I think his father worked in the Japanese embassy. But in 1945, he was at the end of the runway as a kamikaze pilot when Japan surrendered. He'd already had one attempt and failed. And this was, he said he'd done the lot, he'd had the sake and he had the thing on his head and everything. But the point of the story is we played Japan Hong Kong played Japan in the final of the Asian Rugby Games. And the Japanese line out, because they weren't big, they didn't import people then. And their line out code was a number. And what happened was that their hooker stood there and then turned his back on the line out and walked away. And when he got to the number of the call, he would turn round and he hurtled the ball at the front man in the line out, who stuck his hands out and deflected it into the scrum half's hands. And the ball was in the centre before. We were all in Hong Kong just working or having a good time. These guys were semi-professionals. They had two wings, Ito and Sakata, who had been players of the year in New Zealand the year before. I mean, they were a quality side. But that was what they did with the line out because they couldn't win it because we had big men. And so they couldn't outjump us. And all these things have gone because we have this lifting.
It's ridiculous. You see the photographs, don't you, of lifting when they're not actually lifting now; they're throwing a player, throwing. So hands are not on the bottom anymore, supporting. They're chucking them up, and I do question the law that says that they must be brought down safely. And I can't see how you can possibly suggest that chucking somebody up to catch them as if they've just come off a trampoline or something or other is possibly going to be safe when they're a 20-stone person. I can't see it. Anyway, there's me. Gets off soapbox.
And I think somebody will die on a rugby pitch in front of 70,000 spectators and millions on television. And the game is in trouble anyway. And I think we're in serious trouble now. I mean, I look at my local club and we can't field a second side now. And we used to field 3 vets, I think. I mean, I finished my rugby career in community rugby. I coached West Norfolk and was playing for the seconds. When I did throw up over the referee's boots and realised it, I couldn't. I mean, when Finn Russell kicked that kickoff against Wales, which turned the game, it could have been my games master talking, because he would never let us turn our back on the ball. And in my last game of rugby ever, that was my undoing. We got a penalty on the halfway line, and they were all jogging away, and instinct took over from common sense, and I tapped and went, and it was great. I was clear. 30 yards to go to the line, and I became aware of this figure in the corner of my eye coming across and coming across and coming across to cut me off. And I thought I'll just step inside him and score under the posts. But unfortunately, my legs collapsed and I head butted him in the stomach and fell over the line and promptly threw up on the referee's boots. Realised that was the end. But there was Finn Russell, who I think is the great undoer of defences, just thinking too quickly for the opposition that day.
Let's not talk about international players, please. They're
Sorry,
just
no, but
no. Let's move away from that one. What, when do you think that things changed in terms of that link between community rugby and the elite, as we now call it, game, or the international game, or the senior club games, or I don't know how to describe it now because it's just so dysfunctional, in my opinion.
when they introduced leagues, I think that was, I'd like to think of it as the beginning of the end. You know, you referee at community level. You see, I've always believed one of the great joys of rugby, if I take my own circumstances, that I went through school. When I was 8 years old, I used to go to a ground called Tipper Lynn, which is where Watson's College were. And a little boy peered round the corner one day. I used to kick a ball about until the groundsman came and kicked me out. And this little boy came down and we started kicking a ball to each other. His name was Ian Robertson,
The Ian Robertson.
the Ian Robertson. Now, I played against Ian all the way through school because we would play Watson's once in the autumn term and once in the spring term, because we played rugby 2 terms. And then I played in an Edinburgh school side, and the halfbacks were Ian Robertson and Gordon Connell, who died recently, who was a British Lion and played scrum half in Scottish and Scotland. And Ian and Gordon were our halfbacks. And then Ian went to Aberdeen University. I went to Edinburgh University, so I played against Ian at university. He then went to Cambridge. I still played against him. And then we played together for Scotland and London Scottish. Now, our journey ended there. But if you take this two guys in Edinburgh and they play against each other all the way through school, then they get into their former pupils' teams. They play against each other. Then they get picked for Edinburgh together. Then they get picked for Scotland together. Then they get dropped by Scotland and they come back down to Edinburgh. And then they come back down. They're still playing for their club sides together against each other. But they're friends now. And then eventually they're down in the seconds. And these teams, they ran 5 sides. And at Point Future, they'll be playing for the fourths, and they're in their mid-30s. And what were their girlfriends will be friends, and their wives will be friends. And after they've played, they'll go out to dinner together. And there is this huge continuity. And it's, oh, great, we're playing Watsonians on Saturday. I'll see Fred or whoever it is. And I never forget playing for Harriet's Thirds as a youngster, not 19, 18, 19-year-old. And our number 8, or one of our players, telling me about this dirty bastard in the other side. He'll go for your eyes. And he gave me a whole list of the transgressions that were about to happen. And he said, just stay away from him. I hate him. I really hate him. And true enough, this guy was pretty violent. And I go off, get changed afterwards, come into the bar, and they're sitting at the bar, the two of them together, chatting away. And I realized they were just mates. And this had come purely out of rugby because they played against each other. The leagues have destroyed that. And I think it's one of the reasons that we're now struggling to keep players in junior teams. And also, our ex internationalists went on playing. I captained Army Hong Kong for 3 seasons. Played at West Norfolk at the end because I loved playing. But international players, when they retire, they retire. They don't go back to their clubs. If kids get picked by an academy like Northampton Academy or Leicester Academy, and they get kicked out because they're not good enough, do they go back to their clubs? No, because I think they feel that they're a failure, which they would never have felt in the old days because these academies didn't exist.
To everybody listening, thank you for listening to our Rugby Club podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please don't forget to like, follow, and share it with your teammates, your friends, supporters of rugby. It really helps our club grow. And if you'd like to get involved, support our rugby club or come down. Well, we don't really have a club, but you know what I'm saying. Just reach out. And if you want to be part of the journey that we're on today and in the future, promoting community rugby, that would be amazing too. So from all of us at our rugby club, thanks for being part of the rugby family today.